It's a great joy for me to be here, and I wish to start by thanking you for allowing me to come and speak. I feel very honored. And it's with great joy that I join you here as a representative of Norway in the holy city of Jerusalem, a city that binds Christians and Jews together in a historical context in which our stories are intertwined, both in the past but also in the future. We are in the land of Moses, Deborah, David, Isaiah, and Jeremiah, who all lived in times of great turmoil and idolatry, just like we do. Just as history is an on-flowing current of events, we are all part of the same story unfolding, yet in another age. As Europe today has become one of the most secularized and spiritually antagonistic regions in the world, but also today, there are the Davids and there are the Goliaths. One of the main reasons why this development has been made possible has been the Church's own fearful and indecisive attitude in facing the continuous attacks which have come from Europe's and America's atheists and extremist liberals who for so long have dominated the political scene. The past 100 years, the atheistic revolt, with its ruthless deconstruction of traditional values and demonstrative push away from religious ideals, has created an ongoing battle to crush the beliefs of the Church, and thus also reduce the reverence for the dogmatic Jewish prophets, like Jeremiah, and the respect for the Judeo-Christian history of religions. It's long been recognized that the Church, as a conservative authority, poses a great obstacle to the radical left. And in this picture, the example of Norway. I come from Norway. The example of Norway is very interesting. This small but rich oil country that was so lucky to find oil in the 1970s yearly hosts the highly politicized Nobel Peace Prize, is also the country that was split apart by the terrorist attack last year that killed 77 people. But how can a country that used to be such a friend of Israel turn into a nation with a government that refuses to renounce Hamas as a terrorist movement? Prior to the Oslo Peace Accord in 1993, Yasser Arafat was required to denounce terrorism. Today, the radical leftist government of my country silently accepts Hamas' demand for ethnic cleansing of the Jewish minority in the Middle East, while foreign ministers like Jonas Gahr Støre impose no major remark while Norway's money floats, Norway's oil revenues float by the billions into Gaza. The wealthy Norwegian trade unions have played a definite role in this development. Since the 1970s, they have strongly supported an organization which is remarkably well organized and influential in the Norwegian labor force, called the Palestinian Committee, which states that its main goal is to fight Israel's Zionism and views the state of Israel as the main, and its existence as the main hinder to peace in the Middle East. Several of the Christian youth groups in my country are members here. The negative sentiments among intellectuals have been particularly strong, as we saw amongst many other incidents, which I'm not going to address here, when Mr. Alan Dershowitz, the very famous Harvard professor, came to Norway last year, and he was not welcomed at any Norwegian university. A larger part of the leftist groups who have gained power in the aftermath of the 1968, among these groups, we find also the very strong influence on the humanities at the Norwegian universities. My country is also the nation where a majority of the media now is owned by the leftist movement through the A-pressen, and articles almost solely portraying Israel from a negative point of view. On the local level, disturbing leading polls like the Oslo Municipal Survey 2011 stated that Jew now is the most used cuss word in Oslo capital schools. 1/3 of the Jewish children felt continuously bullied, the number being as low as 5% for Muslims. The degree of anti-Israelism in Norway has shown the past years is unprecedented in modern Norwegian history and has been highly criticized by, amongst other, the President of Israel, Mr. Shimon Peres. I say anti-Israelism is anti-Semitism's new phase in Europe. What is equally serious, why is the Norwegian church so complacently and conveniently silent? The bishops and church leaders should speak louder than ever, but since they also are a part of the secular Norwegian workforce, paid by the state and organized through the labor unions, they shut up. Retired professor of church history at the University of Oslo, Bernt Oftestad, pointed to this when he recently held his final lecture. He said that the Norwegian society is heading towards a totalitarianism fueled by the leftist political elite and the media, who attempt to control everything and everyone to act and think like them. As early as 1923, Labour Party politician and Foreign Minister Edward Bull wrote, and this is scary, that the controlling of the teachings of the church, demeaning its authority, and voicing ruthless opposition against the authority of the church were major goals for the left in Norway. In the post-World War era, the church has been increasingly monitored by the government, which tends to be the tendency in the countries dominated by socialist ideology, like the Eastern blocs under the Cold War. Popular topics which church leaders engage in are almost solely politically correct. But there is quite an amount of hope. A recent survey by Norway's largest newspapers, VG, showed that there is a big split, like we've heard others say here, between the political leftist elite, and sadly the leadership of the church may be counted maybe into that group, and the mainstream views among the people of Israel. Upon asked if they support Norwegian media's chronically negative covering of Israel, 60% of the Norwegian people felt that the Israeli embassy last year was right in complaining about the news being highly biased. And my story is also part of this hope. I am a writer, a historian of religions, and a writer in Norway. What has happened in my life is that I speak bluntly about these issues in the situation in my country, and it's hard for me even to write an article. I write for all the major papers in Norway. I have my articles published all over. When I have an article published, I'm invited to go to the main TV channels to speak about it. Why do you say this? Is there something really good about Israel? Can you please explain? Yesterday I was at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Several of the Norwegian newspapers came to Israel to be there. They're reporting about it. There's a lot. This is why I'm running a little bit in and out of the room due to a journalist calling me. I'm answering the phone. I'm just saying the example of even what I'm citing, the 60% of the mainstream people. Why are my books such best-selling books in Norway? I speak about the need for religion, the need for morality, the need to return to some of the traditional values of our time. This is very popular amongst the people. And when we consider the words of Jeremiah, and when we remember that in every age there are Goliaths, but in every age there are also the Davids. And what seems to be impossible in this war of information, because the point we're at in this particular meeting, as we sit together now, this is the front line. Not only the military, we are at the front line in a war on information, and it's very vital that the Christian groups who seek to come with an alternative to the radical leftist movement that has permeated both the church and our political systems in our country, it's very vital we stand together, rise up, and understand that change is possible. And this is why I say we want change. And the country of Norway today, we have several strong political parties, some of them leading, and we see it for the next election. There's large hope to get them into the government, and this will produce a change in the relationship towards Israel. So I'm here to say, even though it looks bleak, there's a lot of hope. Thank you.